My name is Becky. I am 57 years old, and I have been battling depression the majority of those 57 years. When I was a child, I was born the eldest of three children and was raised by both my mother and my father. So had a very normal Midwestern upbringing. A few little bouts of problems in the family, but that's not unusual. Nothing too severe from my perspective. However, one of the things that I noticed was that my mother would get very moody at times, and it would sometimes linger for a few days, or she would get a little bristly, lose some patience. But I just thought this was typical for mothers, so again, didn't think much of it. My personality was that of that resembled my nickname. My nickname was Pollyanna because I was always positive. My parents said I never met a person that I didn't like. I never had strangers. I just always had friends. I had a very positive outlook on life. If you will, I think I'm one of those people that primarily has a growth mindset. I believe that there are good things that are going to happen, and that if I work hard and try my best, that good things will happen, that I can be successful. So I was always happy. I like to smile. I like to sing. Never an inkling of anything other than that kind of a personality until the time I hit about high school. Developed some relatively high levels of stress. In fact, was hospitalized for what they thought was a brain tumor, and it ended up being a stress or tension headache. I had to be medicated for that. I also learned some biofeedback techniques, learned to control some of the muscles in my forehead area so that I could relax when one of those headaches was coming on, and that's helped me many years. I would also mention that while I was a teenager, my grandmother, my mother's mother, she lost her husband, my grandfather, to cancer, and I noticed for a period of a few years that Nanny, what I called her, seemed much moodier than usual. She was prone to fits of crying and some anger and some tension, things that didn't seem to be the Nanny that I once knew. And I attributed it to having lost my grandfather and nothing more. Well, I ended up, after grad school, getting married and moving to Thailand, of all places. My husband and I worked there. We were missionaries, and I was a teacher. And started off, I just absolutely loved the country. Well, I love the country to this day. Enjoyed life, and things were rosy. But there was a lot of adjustment to be made. So we had to learn a new language, lots of cultural differences that we had to adapt to. The living conditions were much different, even in our own home. And then just our general lifestyle. We had to adopt more of a Thai lifestyle, which was different from an American lifestyle that we were accustomed to. But although it was difficult, to me it was all an adventure, and again, I loved it. It was wonderful. There was stress, though. Then I had my first child, and Jennifer was born when I was about 30 years old, and things went well after the birth of my first child. There was nothing that was significant, as well as my health changes, other than what naturally occur with the pregnancy and labor and delivery. Beyond that, though, we moved to a little place or a big place called Chonburi outside of Bangkok, there in Thailand, and we became more isolated at that point. There weren't any other Americans that we knew of that lived there, very few Westerners at all, so we were having to relate to everyone and talk about everything in Thai, of course, except just within our own family. During that time, my husband began showing signs of, increasing signs of anger. He rather vicious in his talk. Um, Started really reacting to me by putting me down, by complaining, and I just took all of this in. That was something new to me, but took it all in and began to think a lot about it, and ended up very, very stressed. The relationship with my husband became very rocky. I realized my own self-esteem was fairly low, but I really had no one to talk to about it because it was very difficult to discuss those kinds of things in Thai. And there was no one around who could communicate in English to the degree that I needed to be able to talk to someone. So it was rough for a while. Um, my husband was away a lot, and I was even more isolated, but when he was home, he was not a very pleasant person to be around. So it was very difficult. But then, after a while, we came back on what's called furlough to the United States for about 6 months. Brought our firstborn back, and we were with grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins, and it was just wonderful. I noticed that I was feeling still a little more agitated than I was used to, and more tired than usual. But again, young mom, you attribute it to just that, being a young mother. While we were on furlough, I ended up getting pregnant again. And when we returned to Thailand, it was not, very many months afterwards that our second child was born. And it was, great labor and delivery as it had been with the first one, no problems at all. But about, I don't know, 2 to 3 months after giving birth, things sort of came crashing in on me. My husband was still he would put me down a lot. He would be angry when I didn't respond the way that he wanted me to or he expected me to. We were very isolated. We had moved back to Chonburi. I had no one that I could really talk to, and I was expected to put on a happy face and go out. But I noticed that I kept feeling, I would think that with depression you would call it sad, but it wasn't sadness to me. It was a feeling of